Picture this with me for a moment. A young eagle, majestic and full of potential, slowly being convinced that it belongs in a chicken coop. Day after day, it learns to peck at the ground, to stay within the fence, to be content with the scraps thrown its way. That eagle, that magnificent creature born to soar above mountain peaks, gradually forgets it has wings at all. My friends, this is what happens to so many of us when we enter into marriage, believing it's the ultimate destination of our life's journey. I know these words might ruffle some feathers. They might make some of you uncomfortable. Good, because comfort is the enemy of growth. Let me tell you about Michael, a brilliant artist I met in 1982. His eyes used to light up when he talked about traveling the world, capturing its raw beauty on canvas. He had this fire, this unstoppable energy that made you believe anything was possible. Then he got married. It's time to be responsible. Everyone told him, you need a stable job, a mortgage, a retirement plan. Today, Michael sells insurance. He hasn't touched a paintbrush in 15 years. His dreams, they're buried under a mountain of obligations, expectations, and what society calls doing the right thing. But here's the question that keeps me up at night. Was it really the right thing? Have you ever wondered why we so readily accept this societal prescription for life? This one-size-fits-all formula that says marriage is the ultimate goal, the pinnacle of human achievement. The truth is, we've been conditioned to believe that being alone is somehow a failure, that we're incomplete without a spouse, that our worth is somehow diminished if we don't follow this predetermined path. In my years of counseling, I've watched countless individuals, bright, talented, extraordinary souls, slowly dim their light to maintain marital harmony. They call it compromise. I call it surrender. Surrender of dreams, surrender of potential, surrender of the divine spark that makes each of us uniquely magnificent. Think about the language we use around marriage. As settling down. What an interesting phrase. When did we decide that settling was something to aspire to? When did we convince ourselves that down was the direction we should be moving in? In 1978, I met a woman named Catherine. She was 65, never married, and lived a life that most people couldn't comprehend. She had traveled to 47 countries, written 3 books, started 2 successful businesses, and spent her winters teaching underprivileged children in developing nations. Society looked at her with pity. The poor spinster, they whispered. But when I looked in her eyes, I saw something different. I saw freedom. I saw fulfillment. I saw a life lived on her own terms. Now contrast that with Thomas, a brilliant physicist I counseled in 1993. He had a groundbreaking theory about quantum mechanics, something that could have revolutionized our understanding of the universe. But his wife didn't support his obsession with research. She wanted him home for dinner at 6 p.m. sharp, wanted him to attend social functions, wanted him to be normal. Today, his theory remains unproven, his passion unfulfilled. The most insidious part of this whole system is how it masquerades as love. If you love me, you'll put our family first. If you love me, you'll give up that risky venture. If you love me, you'll be content with what we have. But I ask you, is it really love if it requires the sacrifice of your essence? Is it really love if it demands the death of your dreams? Let me be clear. I'm not suggesting that all marriages are prisons. What I am suggesting is that the institution of marriage, as it exists in our society, often becomes a convenient excuse for abandoning our true calling. It becomes a socially acceptable way to play small, to avoid the responsibility of becoming all that we're capable of being. I remember sitting with a group of men in 1987, all successful executives, all married for over 20 years. After a few drinks, the truth started spilling out. One confessed he'd always wanted to be a writer. Another admitted he dreamed of opening a restaurant. A third spoke about his passion for teaching, but they all had the same refrain. I can't do that to my family. The sadness in their eyes haunts me to this day. See, marriage often becomes the great excuse, the perfect alibi for not pursuing our dreams, for not taking risks, for not stepping into our greatness. I would, but my spouse, I could, but my family, I should, but my responsibilities. And slowly, year by year, dream by dream, we die a death by 1,000 compromises. But here's what's even more tragic. We pass this legacy of compromise to our children. They watch us, they see us surrender our dreams, they witness our quiet desperation, our unspoken regrets, our resigned acceptance of mediocrity. And they learn that this is what adulthood looks like. This is what love looks like. This is what life is supposed to be. Let me share something deeply personal with you. In 1975, I counseled a young woman named Rachel. She was 28, married with 2 children, and suffering from severe depression. One day, she brought me her teenage diary. In it, she had written about her dreams of becoming a marine biologist, of exploring the ocean depths, of making groundbreaking discoveries. But her parents had told her, find a good man first. Career can wait. She followed their advice. She found her good man. And now, a decade later, her only connection to the ocean was the wallpaper in her bathroom. The pain in her voice when she said, I don't want my daughter to make the same mistake. It still echoes in my mind. But here's the brutal truth. Her daughter probably will make the same mistake, because that's how deeply this programming runs. That's how effectively. We've been conditioned to believe that marriage is a safe choice. The right choice, the only choice. Think about the metaphors we use for marriage. The ball and chain, tying the knot, settling down. Our language reveals our deeper understanding of what marriage often becomes: a constraint, a limitation, a surrender of freedom. Yet we laugh these phrases off, treat them as jokes, while ignoring the profound truth they contain. I've watched brilliant minds dim their light in the name of marital harmony. I've seen passionate souls suppress their fire to maintain domestic peace. I've witnessed vibrant spirits fade into bland conformity, because that's what married people do. And every time, a piece of my heart breaks. In 1989, I met James, a gifted musician. His guitar playing could make angels weep. But his wife thought music was an unstable career. She wanted security, predictability, normalcy. Today, James is a middle manager at a paper company. His guitar gathers dust in the attic, and sometimes late at night, he takes it out and plays softly so as not to wake his wife. Tell me, is this not a form of death? The most dangerous aspect of marriage is how it creates a false sense of security. We think we're being responsible, mature, practical. We tell ourselves we're doing the right thing. But what if the right thing is just another name for fear? What if being responsible is just code for playing it safe? What if maturity is just surrender in disguise? In nature, when an animal is caged, even in a comfortable cage with regular meals and no predators, it begins to lose its natural instincts. Its muscles atrophy. Its senses dull. Its spirit dims. Is this not what happens to many of us in marriage? We trade our wildness for comfort, our freedom for security, our potential for predictability. I remember counseling a couple in 1992. The husband had a chance to start his own business. He had the skills, the vision, the passion. But his wife was terrified of the financial uncertainty. We have a mortgage, she said. We have children, she said. We can't take risks, she said. Today, he still works at the same corporation, still talks about someday, still carries that look of quiet desperation in his eyes. And here's what breaks my heart. He thinks he made the right choice. He tells himself he sacrificed his dreams for love. But I ask you, is it love to clip someone's wings? Is it love to cage someone's spirit? You might be sitting there thinking, but Dr. Dyer, marriage provides stability, companionship, love. And yes, it can. But at what cost? When did we decide that stability was more important than growth? When did we convince ourselves that companionship was worth more than authenticity? When did we agree that love required the sacrifice of our most profound truths? In 1984, I worked with a woman who had just turned 50. Her children were grown, her husband had his routine, and she finally decided to pursue her dream of becoming a painter. But when she set up her easel in the spare room, her husband said, "Aren't we too old for hobbies?" Those words, they were like a knife to her soul. Then she packed away her paints and never touched them again. The tragedy isn't just that she gave up her dream. The tragedy is that she believed she had to. The tragedy is that she accepted his limitation as her own. The tragedy is that she allowed someone else's fear to define her possibilities. Let me tell you something that society doesn't want you to know. Your potential is sacred. Your dreams are not negotiable. Your purpose is not something to be compromised away in the name of domestic tranquility. I remember sitting with a group of women in 1983 at a retreat. Every single one of them had a version of the same story. I once dreamed of, I had planned to, and every single story ended the same way, but then I got married. As if marriage was supposed to be the end of their story, not a chapter in it. Here's a truth that might shake you. Marriage as we know it is often a socially acceptable form of surrender. It's a way of saying, I'm done growing. I'm done challenging myself. I'm done pursuing the magnificent possibilities of my existence. In 1991, I counseled a man named Robert. He was a gifted writer who had published 2 successful novels before marriage. After marriage, his wife complained that his writing took too much emotional energy away from their relationship. A real husband would focus on his family, she said. He hasn't written a word since. When I asked him if he missed it, he said, sometimes I dream entire novels in my sleep. The loss in his voice was palpable. We celebrate this kind of sacrifice. We call it maturity. We call it growing up. We call it being responsible. But let me ask you something. Since when did responsibility mean abandoning our divine purpose? Since when did maturity mean surrendering our dreams? Since when did growing up mean growing small? I witnessed a conversation in 1988 between 2 friends. One was engaged, the other single. The single friend was planning to backpack through Asia for a year. The engaged friend said, I'm so glad I don't have to figure out what to do with my life anymore. Marriage just makes everything simpler. Those words haunted me. Since when did we start seeing the end of personal growth as something every major religion, every spiritual tradition speaks of the divine spark within each of us? They talk about our unique purpose, our special gifts, our individual calling. Yet somehow, we've created a social institution that often requires us to dim that spark, ignore that purpose, suppress those gifts in the name of harmony and compromise. In 1977, I worked with a couple, both talented musicians. Before marriage, they performed together, created together, inspired each other. After marriage, they got caught up in the responsibilities of married life. They stopped performing, they stopped creating, they stopped inspiring. Today, their instruments collect dust and they watch TV every night, living what society calls a normal life. But I ask, is it normal to suppress your gifts? Is it normal to ignore your calling? Is it normal to let your soul wither in the name of conformity? Let me be clear about something. The problem isn't marriage itself. The problem is how we've been conditioned to view marriage as an endpoint rather than a journey, as an achievement rather than a process, as a cage rather than a launching pad. I remember a conversation with a young man in 1985. He was an environmental scientist with groundbreaking ideas about sustainable agriculture. But his fiancée wanted him to take over her father's insurance business. It's a stable future, she said. It's the responsible choice, she said. He took the job. Today, those ideas about sustainable agriculture remain unexplored. That passion remains unfulfilled. That potential remains unrealized. He made the right choice. He tells himself he chose love. But I ask you, is it really love if it requires you to abandon your purpose? Is it really love if it demands you to be less than who you truly are? In 1994, I met a woman who had divorced after 25 years of marriage. I realized I wasn't really living. I was just responding to everyone else's expectations. My husband's, my children's, society's. I had become so good at being who they needed me to be that I forgot who I was meant to be. This is the silent tragedy playing out in homes across the world. People slowly, quietly surrendering their authenticity, their purposes, their potential, all in the name of being a good spouse. How can you be truly good for anyone if you're not first true to yourself? I've seen it happen countless times. A person enters marriage full of dreams, ambitions, and potential. Then slowly these dreams are negotiated away. We can't afford for you to start over. What will people think? Be realistic. And with each compromise, each surrender, each abandonment of a dream, a piece of their soul dies. And here's what's even more devastating. We call this love. We wrap our surrender in the language of sacrifice and commitment. We convince ourselves that giving up our dreams is noble, that abandoning our potential is mature, that playing small is somehow an expression of love. Let me share something that happened in 1980. I was counseling a couple, both educators. The wife had been offered a prestigious fellowship to study innovative teaching methods in Finland. It was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. But her husband said, if you really loved me, you wouldn't want to leave for a year. She declined the fellowship. Today, she still teaches the same way she did 30 years ago, and that innovative teaching method she might have developed. It died before it was born. Think about the messages we send our children when we accept these limitations. When they see us surrender our dreams in the name of marriage, what are we teaching them about love? When they watch us shrink ourselves to fit into someone else's comfort zone, what are we teaching them about relationships? When they witness us trading our potential for security, what are we teaching them about? I remember a conversation with a man in 1986. He was an accomplished architect with a vision for sustainable urban housing. His wife wanted him to design conventional suburban homes because that's where the money is. He compromised. Today, his revolutionary ideas for sustainable living remain sketches in a drawer while he designs cookie-cutter houses that all look the same. Is this not a form of death? The most insidious part is how we normalize this death. We call it growing up. We call it being practical. We call it putting family first. But let me ask you something. Since when did growing up mean growing small? Since when did being practical mean being less than we're capable of being? Since when did putting family first mean putting our divine purpose last? In 1990, I worked with a woman who was a gifted healer. She had an incredible ability to help people overcome emotional trauma. But her husband was uncomfortable with her gift. It's too weird, he said. What will our friends think? He said she stopped practicing. Today, she works as a bank teller, and all those people she could have helped, they're still waiting for a healer who silenced her gift in the name of marital harmony. When we enter marriage believing we need to sacrifice our potential for its success, we're not just harming ourselves, we're harming our partners too. Because true partnership, true love, should amplify our light, not dim it. Should expand our possibilities, not limit them. Should call us higher, not keep us small. I remember counseling a couple in 1979. The husband was a talented composer who had stopped creating music because his wife found his creative process disruptive. She wanted a quiet, orderly home. He gave her what she wanted. But in gaining that quiet home, she lost the man she fell in love with. That passionate, creative soul who could make magic with melodies. Tell me, who really won in this compromise? And here's what's even more tragic. We pass this pattern down through generations. Children who grow up watching their parents surrender their dreams in the name of marriage learn that this is what love looks like. They learn that sacrifice means giving up what makes you come alive. They learn that commitment means committing to being less than you could be. In 1988, I met a couple who had been married for 40 years. The wife had always wanted to write children's books. The husband had always wanted to teach philosophy. Instead, they ran a hardware store together because it was... When I asked them about their dreams, they laughed and said those were just young people's fantasies. But I saw the pain behind their laughter. I saw the cost of those surrendered dreams. Every great spiritual teacher has talked about the importance of being true to your divine purpose. Yet somehow we've created a version of marriage that often asks us to betray that purpose. We've created a system where love becomes an excuse for playing small, where commitment becomes a reason for abandoning our gifts. I'll never forget what a woman told me in 1993. She was 70 years old, recently widowed after 45 years of marriage. She said, I spent my whole marriage being who my husband needed me to be. Now that he's gone, I don't know who I am. The tragedy in her voice still haunts me. So what's the solution? Am I suggesting we abandon the institution of marriage altogether? No. What I'm suggesting is far more revolutionary. We need to transform our understanding of what marriage can be. Imagine a marriage that operates not as a cage, but as a launching pad. Imagine a partnership where both individuals are committed not just to each other's comfort, but to each other's growth. Imagine a relationship where the question isn't, what do I have to give up? But rather, how can we both become more? In 1981, I met one such couple. They were both artists. She a sculptor, he a painter. When they married, they made a sacred pact. They would never ask each other to be less than they were capable of being. When she got an opportunity to study in Paris for a year, he supported her, even though it meant living apart. When he wanted to experiment with a new controversial style of painting, she encouraged him, even when critics called his work disturbing. Today, they're both internationally recognized artists. More importantly, they're both fully alive. But let me be clear, this kind of marriage requires immense courage. It requires the courage to face our own fears, to confront our own insecurities, to challenge our own limitations. It requires the courage to love someone enough to let them be fully themselves, even when their growth makes us uncomfortable. I remember working with a couple in 1987 who were struggling with this very issue. The wife had opportunity to start her own business. The husband was terrified, not of the financial risk, but of how her success might change their relationship. We spent months working through his fears, his insecurities, his learned beliefs about marriage and gender roles. Today, she runs a successful company, and their marriage is stronger than ever because it's built on truth, not limits. When you suppress your potential in the name of marriage, you're not just harming yourself, you're harming your partner too. You're depriving them of the opportunity to grow through supporting your growth. You're robbing them of the chance to rise to their own greatness by witnessing yours. In 1992, I counseled a man who had given up his dream of becoming a documentary filmmaker because his wife wanted a stable life. Years later, she confessed to me that she had lost respect for him, not because he failed, but because he never tried. I fell in love with his passion, she said. When he gave that up, he became a different. The truth is, we don't need fewer marriages. We need better marriages. We need marriages that are crucibles for growth, not coffins for dreams. We need partnerships that call us higher, not relationships that keep us small. We need love that liberates, not love that limits. I want you to imagine something with me. Imagine if every married couple made a commitment, not just to stay together, but to help each other become everything they're capable of being. Imagine if we saw marriage not as a finish line, but as a starting point. Imagine if we understood that the greatest gift we can give our partner is the gift of our own growth. In 1985, I worked with a couple who redefined their marriage vows. Instead of promising to stay the same, they promised to support each other's evolution. Instead of vowing never to change, they vowed to help each other change and grow. The transformation in their relationship was remarkable. They became partners in possibility, not wardens of limitation. But here's the challenging part. This kind of marriage requires us to face our fears. It requires us to confront the terrifying possibility that as our partner grows, they might outgrow us. It requires us to trust that real love expands with growth rather than contracting with fear. I remember a woman I counseled in 1994. She said something profound. I realized I was using marriage as an excuse to avoid my own potential. It was easier to blame my husband for holding me back than to face my own fears of stepping into my greatness. This is the real work of marriage. Not learning to compromise, but learning to expand. Not learning to accept limitations, but learning to transcend them. Not learning to be less, but learning to be more. When we stop using marriage as an excuse to play small, when we stop asking our relationships to protect us from our potential, when we stop expecting our partners to collude in our self-limitation, that's when we become capable of real intimacy. That's when we become capable of real love. Because real love isn't about making each other comfortable. It's about making each other great. Real love doesn't ask us to choose between our relationships and our dreams. It helps us realize our dreams through our relationships. Real love doesn't require us to be less. It challenges us to be more. Look at your marriage or your future marriage through new eyes. Ask yourself, is this relationship calling me higher or keeping me small? Is this partnership expanding my possibilities or limiting them? Am I using love as an excuse to hide or as an inspiration to grow? Remember that eagle we talked about at the beginning, the one that learned to live in a chicken coop? You are that eagle. Your potential is your birthright. Your dreams are your divine assignment. And any relationship, any marriage that asks you to forget your wings is not serving love. It's serving fear. The time has come for a new kind of marriage. A marriage that serves as a catalyst for growth, not a cage for containment. A marriage that functions as a launching pad for dreams, not a graveyard for potential. A marriage that operates as a partnership in possibility, not a pact of limitation. Because in the end, the greatest gift you can give your partner is not your sacrifice, but your greatness. The greatest act of love is not giving up your dreams, but pursuing them with such passion that you inspire others to pursue theirs. The greatest marriage is not one where you become less to accommodate each other, but one where you help each other become more. This is your moment. This is your time. Don't let anyone, not even someone you love, convince you to be less than you were born to be. Because when you fully express your potential, when you fully live your purpose, when you fully spread your wings, that's when you become capable of real love. That's when you become capable of real partnership. That's when you become capable of real marriage. The choice is yours. Choose wisely. Choose courageously. Choose love that liberates, not love that limits. Choose marriage that elevates, not marriage that diminishes. Choose partnership that inspires growth, not relationship that ensures comfort. Because in the end, your potential is not just about you. It's about all the lives you could touch, all the changes you could create, all the difference you could make if only you refuse to let marriage become your excuse for playing. The world needs your gifts. The world needs your dreams. The world needs your potential. Don't let anyone, not even in the name of love, convince you otherwise. As we come to the close of our time together, I want you to do something for me. Close your eyes. Take a deep breath. Feel the weight of all the dreams you've put aside. Feel the heaviness of all the potential you've suppressed. Feel the burden of all the gifts you've hidden, all in the name of being a good spouse. Now imagine letting that weight go. In 1983, I witnessed something extraordinary. A woman named Margaret, married for 32 years, stood up in front of her husband and said, "I love you enough to be fully myself." She had spent 3 decades playing small, being quiet, fitting in. That day, she reclaimed her voice, her power, her purpose. And you know what was remarkable? Her husband didn't leave. Their marriage didn't end. Instead, it transformed into something more beautiful than either of them had imagined possible. Your greatness is not a threat to your marriage. Your mediocrity is. Your power is not a threat to your relationship. Your fear is. Your potential is not a threat to your partnership. Your self-betrayal is. Think about the legacy you're creating. When your children or grandchildren look at your life, what will they see? Will they see someone who used marriage as an excuse to hide? Or will they see someone who used marriage as a foundation to soar? I remember the last words a man shared with me in 1995, just before he passed away. He said, "I wish I had understood that loving my wife didn't mean giving up my dreams. It meant having someone to dream bigger with." Right now, in this moment, you have a choice. You can continue to use your marriage as a comfortable cage, a safe haven from your own potential. Or you can transform it into what it was always meant to be, a sacred partnership for growth, a divine collaboration for greatness, a holy alliance for becoming. Because the truth is, your marriage isn't killing your potential. Your beliefs about marriage are killing your potential. Your fears disguised as love are killing your potential. Your compromises masked as commitment are. The time has come to write a new story. A story where love and growth dance together. A story where commitment and potential walk hand in hand. A story where marriage becomes not the end of your journey, but the beginning of your greatest. Stand up. Spread your wings. Remember who you are. Remember what you're capable of. Remember why you're here. Your spouse didn't marry you to make you small. Your partner didn't choose you to dim your light. Your marriage wasn't meant to be your prison. It was meant to be your launching. So let today be the day. Let this moment be the moment. Let this understanding be the understanding that transforms everything, because the world doesn't need more comfortable marriages. The world needs more courageous marriages. The world doesn't need more settled couples. The world needs more awakened couples. The world doesn't need more compromised dreams. The world needs more realized potential. Your marriage isn't your excuse to hide. It's your platform to shine. It's not your reason to shrink. It's your invitation to expand. Rise up, step forward, spread your wings. And remember, the greatest gift you can give your marriage isn't your sacrifice. It's your magnificence. Pray, the time is now. The person is you. And the choice, what will you choose?